Danny fell into step beside him. The streets of Darkwater were already emptying, everyone moving inside earlier than usual. "I'm not joking around, Ryan," Danny said. "I've heard it. 2 years back, right outside my house, late at night." "Heard what?" Danny went quiet for a moment. "My mom's voice. My mom has been gone for 6 years, Ryan." Ryan didn't have an answer for that. The next day had the particular quality of days before storms. Everyone moving with purpose, getting things done early, watching the sky. By late afternoon, every porch in Darkwater was empty. By evening, every door in town was shut. Ryan and his wife Sarah sat in the living room. The television was on, but neither of them was watching it. Around 10 o'clock, Sarah turned off most of the lights. She was trying to seem casual about it, but her eyes kept going to the door. "You doing okay?" Ryan asked. She gave a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ask me again in the morning." At 11, the town was so quiet that Ryan could hear the bayou moving somewhere in the dark beyond the tree line. He checked the locks. He wasn't sure when he decided to do that, but he did it. Just before midnight, there was a knock at the door. Both of them went still. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered. "Yes." A pause. Then it came again. 3 knocks, even impatient. "It's probably just," Ryan started. Then a voice. "Ryan, open up. Please, Ryan." The color left Ryan's face entirely. It was Danny's voice. Perfectly, completely Danny. The particular rhythm of how Danny said his name, the slight roughness in his throat that had been there since high school. "Ryan, man, I need help. Please." Sarah grabbed his arm. "Don't. What if it's actually him? What if something happened? Ryan, remember what Elder James said." The voice came again, more urgent now. "There's something behind me, Ryan. I'm serious, man. Please open the door." Ryan was already at the door. His hand was on the deadbolt. Jar then rose on its own and began floating alongside her as she walked. The clock's hands pointed toward midnight. In a room glowing with the soft light of clay oil lamps, a young bride named Evelyn sat on a bed decorated with red flowers, her eyes slowly growing heavy with sleep. Suddenly her eyes shut, and she felt as if someone had clamped a hand tightly over her mouth. Evelyn thrashed violently. Startled, she woke with a jolt. The room was completely silent. Her husband, Preston, was nowhere to be seen. Why hasn't Preston come back yet? It feels like it's been forever. Dressed in her red bridal attire, Evelyn climbed down from the bed and, calling out for Preston through her veil, began moving from room to room through the old mansion. Suddenly, reaching the door of one room, her steps came to a halt. The door was slightly ajar, and strange sounds were coming from inside. A foul, unsettling odor drifted out along with smoke from the room. Before Evelyn could step inside, she felt a warm hand on her shoulder. "Did I scare you? Where were you? My bride is in such a hurry. I was just coming to find you. Where else would I go tonight? Leaving you behind. I've been waiting so long. Where were you? And why is it so dark in here? This place feels strange. No questions tonight. Just you and me. By tomorrow morning, you'll understand everything." Preston extinguished the oil lamps burning in the room and carried Evelyn in his arms to the bed. A short while later, Evelyn lay deep asleep, completely at ease. But Preston, he looked completely different now. His eyes had turned blood red. He wore black robes. Black ash was smeared across his forehead. His eyes were rimmed with thick, dark kohl, and his face held the merciless expression of a butcher. He lifted Evelyn and laid her on the ground. He chanted for a while. Then, taking a dagger from beside the ritual fire, he severed her head from her body. The mansion echoed with Preston's laughter.
Boots. And Tyler would be walking toward him out of the dark, except in the dream. Tyler's head hung wrong on his neck, tilted at an angle no living person's head could tilt. And every single night, in that same flat, wet voice, Tyler would say the same 6 words before his hands closed around Jake's throat. "You took 12 years from me." Jake would wake up gasping, some nights with his own hands wrapped around his own neck, digging in hard enough to leave marks. The dream came almost every night for 12 years. Guards on night shift got used to hearing him choke himself awake. A prison counselor called it trauma-related nightmares, and gave him a pamphlet. Jake called it something else. He never said it out loud. But somewhere in those 12 years, lying awake at 3 in the morning with his throat aching from his own grip, Jake became certain that Tyler Brooks had never really left that gravel parking lot at all. Release. Jake walked out of Wabash Correctional on a gray Tuesday in March, 31 years old, carrying a duffel bag with everything he owned and a bus ticket back to Clayton Falls. His mother had passed 2 years into his sentence. His father hadn't visited once. There wasn't much waiting for him. A cousin's spare room, a job lined up at a machine shop through a reentry program, in a town that hadn't forgotten what he'd done, even if 12 years had blurred the edges of it for most people. The dreams didn't stop when he got out. If anything, they got worse, sharper, longer, more detailed, like something had been saving up strength for 12 years and finally had room to stretch. 3 days after his release, Jake did something he'd never let himself do before. He drove out to Restwood Cemetery on the north edge of town, the only cemetery in Clayton Falls, and he found the row where Tyler Brooks had been buried 12 years earlier. He told himself he just wanted to see it, to stand there and say something, even if he didn't know what. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was 12 years of dreams finally pulling him toward the one place he'd spent over a decade trying not to think about. He stood at the foot of the grave until the sun went down, reading the dates on the headstone over and over. Tyler James Brooks, beloved son, taken too soon. Someone had left plastic flowers there, faded almost white from years of sun. Jake didn't leave. He told himself he'd just wait a little longer. He told himself a lot of things that night that he couldn't explain afterward, even to himself. Midnight. By the time midnight came, the cemetery was dead silent except for the wind moving through the bare trees along the fence line. Jake was still standing at the foot of the grave, half frozen, his breath fogging out in front of him just like it had that night in the gravel lot 12 years and 3 days before. He heard the ground before he saw it. A low, wet, shifting sound, like something being dragged up through packed soil. Jake's whole body locked in place. The grass at his feet buckled and split, and the dirt at the base of the headstone folded inward on itself, collapsing into a shallow, dark hollow. Something rose out of it. Jake would later tell himself it was a trick of the moonlight, a trick of exhaustion, a trick of 12 years of guilt finally catching up with a tired mind. But standing there in that cemetery, he saw Tyler Brooks climb up out of the ground exactly the way he'd looked in every single one of those dreams. Pale, soil-streaked, his head hanging at that same impossible angle against his shoulder, held on by nothing but rotted tendon and 12 years of unfinished business. Tyler's eyes opened. They found Jake immediately, like they'd never once looked away in 12 years. "You took 12 years from me," Tyler said, his voice thick with grave dirt and river water, exactly the way it always sounded in the dreams. Jake tried to run. His legs wouldn't listen. By the time his body remembered how to move,
He couldn't hold back anymore. "Tell me something. Why is this diner open at 2 in the morning in the middle of these woods? Who even comes here?" Everyone went silent after his question. The lantern flame flared once, then dimmed. "Son, the people who come here are the ones who've lost their way, and the ones the night itself has called for. Nobody called me here. My grandfather called me." The man on the bench smiled again, faintly. Ethan was starting to feel genuinely strange now. An unnamed fear had settled into him. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through outside. The lantern shook violently, and at that exact moment, from somewhere behind the diner, came the faint sound of a woman crying. The cup nearly slipped from Ethan's hand. He turned, startled, toward the dark woods behind them. What was that sound? Who's out there? Is someone crying? For a moment, silence fell over the diner again. "Son, the dark of night carries a lot of sounds. Not every sound is real. But sir, I heard it clearly. Someone was crying. Sometimes a tired mind makes its own sounds. Maybe it was just your imagination." Ethan looked back again. There was nothing now but darkness. Deep, silent, terrifying darkness. The wind picked up again. The tree branches swayed as if someone were hiding among them. laughing softly. Ethan grabbed his bag quickly. No, I should get going. My grandfather will be waiting. Millbridge is straight ahead from here, right? The old man said nothing, just pointed silently down the path ahead. Walk straight ahead, but don't look back. Ethan paused for a moment. But why? What happens if I look back? Because some things can only be seen from behind. Ethan's throat went dry. He didn't say anything else. He just walked quickly out of the diner. The night had grown even deeper. Ethan walked fast, the sound of that crying still echoing in his ears. Several times he felt as though someone was walking behind him. But remembering the diner owner's words,